Hey, this week on This is Gravel, we have Steve Cannon, we have extremely cold weather, we have social media, and we have
1,000 miles to Nome.
1,000 miles to Nome. Hey, welcome to This is Gravel. I am Bobby Thompson, and with me, as always, is Neil Taylor. Neil, what's been up?
Getting ready for winter, it feels like outside right now. Trying to get my old single speed ready, because that's what I'll be riding when I do ride outside. And then I might be looking towards getting another bike set up on the trainer.
Nice.
Yeah. Getting a little bit older, and I realize as I walk outside on some of these colder days, my body just aches in the cold. I mean, like literally physically aches the moment I walk out the door. And I know I'm not that old. And I know some of you will tell me to shut up about how old I am. But it might as well spend the winter a little bit more comfortable this year.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. Not what I was planning, but hey, that's kind of what I'm getting myself ready for, is getting ready for the winter season here, Bobby. What are you up to, man?
Getting ready for the winter season also. You know, I've last weekend I went up to Eskridge, Kansas, Wabaunsee County Gravel. And I rode the Jagger up there. It's a 16-mile 3-loop event, which is very fun to do. It's just with mostly local riders. I think there were probably maybe 50 of us up there, so it was a blast doing a little low-key event like that. But you know, you got 4,500 feet of climbing and 48 miles, so it's legit climbing, and none of it's rolling because the gravel is so big. So it was fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And this weekend we have a mountain bike, 12-hour mountain bike relay race down in Stillwater, Oklahoma. District Bikes puts it on, and it's a 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. bicycle race because of the time change. But yeah, it's a 12-hour mountain bike race, so all night long. So the hardest part for that for me is I also am older and I love to sleep. So the hardest part of that for me is not sleeping. So
Producer Matt's shaking his head like, oh, quit whining about being old. Just wait. Just wait, okay, buddy? You think all of a sudden everything's good, and then you wake up one day and everything aches.
Yeah, I've decided I am not taking the stocking cap off until April. So the winter's here. So
sounds like a plan. Let's just stick with that. Well, speaking of being cold, I had a chance yesterday to get to talk to a guy that I think is pretty used to being cold. I got to sit down here in the studio and talk with Steve Cannon about his movie 1,000 Miles to Nome. The dude's just crazy, unbelievable.
Steve's awesome.
What he puts himself through. Yeah, and a genuine awesome guy. I mean, really, if you even get a chance to sit down with him for 5 minutes, I mean, you feel like you've known him forever.
Gives some of the best hugs I've ever had. So I'll tell you that right now. So
awesome. Let's check out that interview. All right, guys, we got somebody really special here in the studio with us today. Steve Cannon is with us. Steve, how you doing, man? Good, man. So we got you here because you got a movie called 1,000 Miles to Nome that we're going to get a chance to at least watch here in Emporia here shortly. Looking forward to it. But I want to ask you first, what brought about the idea for you to make a movie like this?
Oh, wow. I think just the scope of it seemed like there'd be an audience for it. For my own selfish reasons, I love the idea of having it documented. And so, it's from its inception was just a pipe dream. I talked to Dave Mabel, the guy that edited and put the whole thing together, and I was just like, hey, man, if we can somehow scrape the money together, would you consider coming up here for 35 days? Is how long he was actually on the trail to make the movie happen. But so it was just, there's only been a couple movies done on it, but I would have had no idea that it would have got as evolved and turned out what it did.
Okay, so like I said, I haven't seen the movie yet. Looking forward to getting to watch it. But I'm sure we're going to find out some of this maybe while watching. But what kept you moving forward on the trail? I mean, all I can think of, especially looking back and seeing your Instagram posts, how cold it was, how snowy it was, how icy it was, the sub-zero temps. How did you keep moving forward out there?
If you don't, things go really bad. So movement, for no other reason than the fact that it creates body heat, will keep you going. I was able to get really compartmentalized. I created a thing on the trail called the 26 Steves. And so I made each day its own one-day thing. And every morning I woke up, I told myself that I was a new Steve, and that Steve was going to be absolutely perfect for whatever the challenges would be that day. And it kept me from looking forward because I made sure that I internalized it to the point that I knew when that day was over that Steve was dead. So he never had to think about day 4, day 7, day 14, day 21. I knew I had another Steve that I could hand the baton to, and he could worry for it, and he could deal with the problems of that day. So it became very much wake up, do the very best you could to get down the trail and take care of yourself, deal with the emotional ups and downs, the changing weather, not only the freezing temperatures, but in this case, this year, after the 5th or 6th day, it got really unseasonably warm, and that created some really unique trouble.
Okay, so you talk a little bit about some of those struggles. What would you say? I mean, you're out there in the middle of nowhere. There's no Casey's. Me and Matt have tried to do some events and other things around here where it's like get to that gas station that's 60 miles down the road. Yeah. My guess is there's not a whole lot of that out there. So what were some of the biggest struggles you faced, whether it was nutrition, taking care of yourself that way, or just being out really in such a remote place like that trail?
So there are... for the people that aren't familiar with the Iditarod Trail Invitational, there, up until last year, there was 2 distances. There was the 350, which finishes in McGrath, and then the Big Dog, which goes all the way to Nome. Last year, they included a shorter distance, but in the first 350, there are some of those Casey's spots for those people that get the convenience store reference. But they're called roadhouses. And so 65 miles from the start, give or take, there's the Yentna Station, which is a roadhouse, which is kind of a bunkhouse where you can get a soup or a grilled cheese or something like that. And then a little further down is Squentna. And so there's a few of these places, so you were able to kind of have that same sort of mindset. The first station to get to that 65 can be a really long haul. You drop onto the river. This past year it got to be minus 30. And in the 3 different distance races, there was a combined total of about 80 competitors. And I think less than 24 hours in, give or take 15 DNF'd. So even a 65-mile section can get to be a little ornery. But after that, once you leave McGrath, man, then it's a whole different ball game. Then you really do enter the great unknown, and there really isn't much, especially on the southern route. And so you mail yourself drop bags, so when you do hit a village, you're able to resupply. But the real challenge is a section between drops might only take you, if the trail's really good, it might only take you a day. But if the trail's really bad, it might take you 4 days. So you have to always pack for the 4-day scenario. So you're always running heavy. The remoteness, I come to embrace that. I moved up to Alaska because the race scared the shit out of me. And so I lived there. I spent a lot of time out in the backcountry by myself. And, if anybody, the first time you go camping by yourself, it's scary, whether it's, outside of Emporia or wherever people watching or listening call home. But the more that you do it, the scariness starts to turn into excitement, and then you find a peace in that place. And that's the real money spot for me.
Okay, so we've looked at the struggles, we've looked at the why or how you were able to keep moving forward, but why? why do this? Why get out there and say, all right, I'm going to tow it up for 1,000 miles through sub-zero temperatures to ride my bike to Nome?
I believe, man, that we're all, as human beings, expansive creatures. It doesn't matter what you're putting in front of you. If it's your first 5K, that's a huge thing. I can remember doing my first one after I finally got out of jail, and that's a whole nother thing, and got sober and all of these kind of things. And I was as scared at the start line there as I was going to Nome. But you finish a 5K and you do a couple of them, and it's just human nature. You're like, man, I want to try a 10K. You know, this was the culmination for me of riding a fat bike 5 years ago, falling over in the snow, not knowing what the hell I'm doing, but knowing I loved it, and not even knowing that a thing called the Iditarod Trail Invitational existed. But I want to see how far this thing can go. I want to see how far I can take it. And that journey for me has become my drug, that human potentiality and that journey of, you know, the weakness of the mind and what's on the other side if you can overcome that. And so eventually that became 350 to McGrath, and then 1,000 miles to Nome.
Awesome. So getting to test yourself is pretty cool, and getting to see how far you're able to push yourself. But one of the other things, at least I like, that you tie in with, whether it be this or your 40 days, is you're raising money for cancer research and for cancer foundations. Why don't you talk a little bit about why you do that and why that's important to you?
So to date, I think we've been able to raise somewhere around $750,000. $1 million is a goal, and then, like we talked before, then you'll find another goal. But for me, it's a repayment. When I ran across the state of Iowa, which preceded running around Lake Michigan, I was afraid when it got really tough that I'd quit. And so I thought if I did it for something other than myself, that it would give me something to lean on. And so at the time, Lance was kicking ass on the bicycle. The yellow bracelet was really cool. I didn't know a lot about it. But I thought, okay. And the Livestrong Foundation made it super easy for people that wanted to raise money. And so I went to the start line, and I'd had a little fundraising portal where people could donate. But a guy and his wife took me aside at the pre-run party the night before I took off to try and run 292 miles across the state. And they said, we just want you to know that this shit matters, man. We buried our 9-year-old son last week. And over the course of the remainder of that night and then the rest of that week, I got to get all of the what I call the gifts of cancer without having to fight it. Meaning I was getting to learn the lessons that nothing is for granted. Like, if you're thinking about your mom today, you freaking call her. You tell her you love her. If you're giving somebody a handshake or a hug, you do it like you mean it, because it might be the last time you get to do it. And so I've never had to fight cancer myself. So at the time of that, when I was able to finish and raise some money, I said, well, this will be how I spend the rest of my life. I'm going to do my best to repay this debt and the lessons these people have taught me. So even all the way through 1,000 miles to Nome and the movie, when people download it, a portion of the proceeds go to different cancer charities.
I'm going to say it's awesome. I know when I read 40 Days, I mean, that's the thing that just hit me right out the gate. I've had family members die from cancer and others that have experienced it, and just your passion for those folks and being out there, and it just seemed like I'm going to keep moving forward, because it's not just about me. You know, it's about these people too, who are each and every day fighting just to live. And, you know, I can handle running 1,037 miles around Lake Michigan, which was just, again, a captivating story. And then you got, by the way, Steve's written 2 books, 40 Days and Upside Down in the Yukon River. Why in the world would you decide to get on a raft in the Yukon River? For those that don't know, it's just as cold up there, by the way, as it is going to Alaska, it seems like.
You know, again, the cancer journey and being around these people in the early days, you know, when I ran my first 5K, if you would have told me, you're going to run a marathon someday, let alone you're going to run 40 of them in a row around Lake Michigan. That wouldn't have even sounded like a good idea to me. I would have just tapped out right there. I mean, I would have quit that 5K if there wouldn't have been people on both sides of the street that would have saw me. It sucked. But you're around these people, and it's great surrounding yourself with people that are driven because they motivate. And so I caught the adventure racing bug out there, which led to becoming familiar with paddling. I fell in love with kayaking, and it's just how I'm wired. I just immediately, once I was really into it and it was a passion of mine, and I talk about it in the book, going to the computer and typing in to the Google search world's longest kayak race. And when it popped up, I had never been out of the country, and the Yukon, and as it turns out, and the title gives it away a little bit, things didn't go exactly as planned. I was probably way over my skis. Had the weather, been nice and cherry the whole time, then, but in places like the Yukon and Alaska and the Iditarod Trail, the weather doesn't cooperate.
Talk about it not going as planned. I mean, as I was reading through that, granted, I know because you wrote the book that you're alive, but I was still waiting for the moment where you died because, I mean, you end up upside down in the Yukon River, as the title says, but then if I'm not mistaken, you get back in the boat. And
a couple times, yeah.
Yeah, did you just keep going? Is there a point where you just said, whether it be with this experience or other experience, where you're like, you know what, it's not worth risking my life to do this?
I didn't get to that. I've had it happen one time. In the case of the Yukon River, I held on as long as I could, and then at a pseudo checkpoint, without giving too much away, my body decided I was done. And so, again, without giving too much away, we'll leave it at that. So certainly there were times, as there is in any great challenge, whether it's physical or starting a business or whatever the case may be, if it's a worthy goal, then there's going to be times during it where you want to quit. If not, then you haven't stretched yourself at all. And so, part of the journey is learning how to deal with that when it comes, and realizing that your mind is nothing more than a governor, if you will, something that's there to keep you safe. And so you have to call bullshit a lot of times on your own mind, because there's so much more available to you beyond that, But on, it's hard to even imagine that this could be the case, but I was maybe 40 miles from the finish in Nome, and I almost quit. And because I had that exact thought.
Yeah.
Is this worth dying for? And you'll get to see that in the movie.
Look forward to it. All right, one last question, because this one just gives me hope, at least, and maybe it'll give some other folks hope too. How does a kid with a score of a 13 on his ACT in English, and who signed up for his first 5K just to meet girls, end up authoring a couple books and going on to do, some crazy things within the adventure community? How did you get to that point, man?
That's got to be my favorite question. We get to be whatever the hell we decide we want to be.
Yeah.
And that's just it. I believe the universe is set up to support each and every one of us without a doubt, without consequence. You decide you want to be a drunk, the universe will put everything in front of you that you need to be the best damn drunk you could ever be, all the way to your grave. I believe that's just the way it's designed. If you decide after getting out of jail for your second drunk driving that you're gonna quit drinking and you've decided with all your heart, then it will support you in that. And then if you've only run one marathon and you decide you're going to try to run 11 in a row, it will do that. And with the book, it was the same thing. I just started writing, and I enjoyed the process. And grammatically, it was probably a 13 on the ACTs. But the great thing about writing a book or deciding you want to do a 100-mile gravel race, or deciding that you want to start a new business, or deciding you want to become a better parent. I mean, if you really put these things in motion, there are all of these things that will support you, right? We're sitting here in Emporia, Kansas, and if I just had it in my heart, and I had never ridden more than 10 miles in my life on a bike, but I had the bug, and I decided, you know what, next year I'm going to go to 200. I'm going to see that finish line coming down Commercial Street. There's 1,000 people within 5 miles of here that could support me in doing that. But you've got to have the intention. You got to have the guts to put it out there. And if you do that, and you can stay in the moment, you can be the very best version of yourself every single moment and every single day, and then saddle up the next day again, then these things will appear and support you. And that's how, that's how great things get done, whatever they are. And so, I love that question, because, you look back now and you think it all started with, a 5K to meet some girls, and then you just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, why don't you tell everybody where they can either find the books, or if they want a chance to get to see the movie, 1,000 Miles to Nome, where they can go and get that opportunity. Plug yourself, man.
I laugh because it's still surreal to think about books and movies and the stuff that we're doing. I'm so grateful to both you guys for giving me. So expandyourpossible.com is where everything lives. The store's there. We're adding new things to it. Alaska Coffee Roasters. I lived in Fairbanks, so we've got a great relationship with them, so we can help you with your nicotine or your caffeine fix. Not the nicotine fix. We're not going to head that way. But so it all lives on expandyourpossible.com. Same, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. But if you go to the website, you'll see all the multimedia and all the different things there, man.
Awesome. Well, Steve, I appreciate it, man, and look forward to seeing that movie tonight.
Right on.
Good time getting to sit down and talk with Steve. We did finally get a chance last night to see the movie. Bobby, what did you think about the movie, man?
I did not know what to think going into the movie. I had no preconceived notions going in, and coming out of the movie, I still don't want to ride in the cold. But I'll give, it's a very inspirational movie, and it makes you appreciate any kind of outdoor activity, bike riding, anything that tests you a little bit.
It just, to me, watching that, sitting there, I was cold. I was literally cold
in the theater watching the movie. It made you cold.
It wasn't because the theater was cold. It was because you could feel the chilliness of Alaska. It felt like coming off the screen. And to think what these individuals that do, whether it's the 150 or the 350 or the 1,000 miles to Nome, like Steve did, I cannot imagine sitting down and saying, yep, this is what I know going into it that I want to put my body through. Just an unbelievable kind of effort to go out there and to spend almost 30 days in Alaska riding your bike at sometimes ridiculously slow paces.
Pushing the bike.
Yeah, I kudos to Steve. Kudos to all the guys that were out there, guys and ladies that knocked that out. That just, I can't imagine what it takes between the ears to even do something like that.
Yeah, and then taking that another step, it's like what we went through with the Cannonball 550 here in Kansas this year. It's one thing to think you know what you're going to need and plan on that and have all these plans. It's another thing to be out there and actually stick to that plan and be able to adjust when the plan's not working, and then go through all that, come back, know what you went through. There was a 10-time finisher on that movie last night. To keep going back and doing that over and over and over again, that's what gets me, because you know what you're going through. Yeah. And it's not something that gets, it doesn't get any easier having known what to plan for, because every time's different. And every time, it's not different as in, I have a town in 5 miles. I need to get to that town and save enough water. It's different as in, I'm by myself for 2 weeks out in the middle of nowhere with no support. For a few days, possibly, even if you call in help. So,
yeah, just unreal. Great movie though to watch. Really enjoyed it. I know in the show description, Matt's going to have a link there. If anyone's interested in checking out the movie, you can go to Steve's webpage there and download that. On top of that, he's also got books and other things that we spent a little bit of time talking about too there in the interview. You can check those out. The cool thing about it is anything that you buy off the page, if you click on that link, 20%, I believe is correct. 20% is going to go to our local high school team here, our cycling club at the high school. So an awesome way to benefit the local kids and to get to check out just how tough of a dude Steve is. Man.
Oh, yeah. Steve actually hosts just to throw a shout out, Steve hosts an event in Cummings, Iowa that is called 24-Hour Coming. It is the first weekend of August every year. I've gone, I think, 4 years now. I missed last year. You want to talk about it? You could literally say this is an event where somebody took a fire pit and threw it out behind a local bar and said, let's go ride bikes. And that's what the core of the event is. Now, it has spread out, and I won't go into it here. We'll go into it down the road a little bit. But it has spread out to be definitely a community, family, gravel event that I would say a lot of us migrate from 2 or 3 states around every year now. First week of August, check it out. 24 hours are coming. So Matt is saying that we've had a ton of social media. Apparently, people do ride in the cold. Or
maybe,
show off riding in the warm weather.
Yeah, or maybe they're in nice warm weather.
Yeah. So let's kick it over to social media.
Hey, thanks Bobby and Neil. Absolutely my favorite time of the show here with social media. First off, we've got this photo from Scott down at Lake Apopka Loop Trail in Central Florida. Jed Spencerson in this photo riding in White County gravel in Arkansas. Michael was out riding from Colorado Springs, Colorado to Pueblo, Colorado and found some gravel for 120 miles. Jeremy was up riding the Jagger in Eskridge, Kansas. Chris Schultz was out riding the Kingdom Trails in Vermont. Ben Bullen was up riding the Wild Goose Chase Gravel Grinder. Looks awesome there, Ben. Todd was at the Alcove Springs Historic Park between Marysville and Blue Rapids, Kansas. Russell Berry was out at the Baldwin Maple Leaf Gravel Grinder. 200 plus starters and a great ride, he says. Selena was out at the Bentonia, Mississippi on the Magic Carpet Ride. Brian Purdy loaded up the bike and went bikepacking for 150 miles this last weekend in north central Florida. Emily Flynn was out in the gorgeous fall colors riding near Georgetown, New York. Pat Glad was out exploring Osage County, Oklahoma. Gina was out at the Loose Line State Trail in Minnesota. Jeff was out riding near Gibson, Colorado in that gorgeous landscape. Brent Lester was at the Highline Canal Trail. Thank you to everybody that submitted photos on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using the hashtag #ThisIsGravel. If you want to see more, make sure you check out there on social media. Back to you, Bobby and Neil.
All right, thank you all for the pictures. Thanks for showing us how nice it is where you ride, and some of you how cold it is where you ride. I won't be visiting you anytime soon. Send us any likes, dislikes, and all the love you can send us to Gravel Guru, This is Gravel, Minister of Gravel, Casual Cyclist. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.